Origin of monogamy. Monogamy is the dissolute daughter of paganism and Romanism. I have demonstrated that monogamy is not commanded in the Bible, and that it is not the doctrine of Christianity. And I shall now account for its origin by proving that it is the joint offspring of paganism and Romanism. The social system of European monogamy is proved to be derived from the ancient Greeks and Romans, especially from the latter, by the early histories of the nations of Europe, and by the uninterrupted descent of traditional customs from them to our own times. It is one of those pagan abominations which we have inherited, which the Roman Church has sanctioned and confirmed, and from which we will find it so difficult to emancipate ourselves. Impurity of ancient Greek and Roman morals. The ancient Greek and Roman notion of marriage and of chastity were in some respect different from ours, but only as Christianity has made them different. We are ready to admit, at least in theory, what Christianity requires, that the laws of chastity are binding upon men and women equally, and that no person can innocently indulge in amorous pleasure except with his own wife or her own husband. But among them this rule of chastity applied to the female sex alone. The other sex claimed and exercised their freedom from it, without concealment or palliation, and at the same time without the loss of moral character or of public estimation. To be grossly addicted to whoredom and seduction was no dishonor. It was only when convicted of sodomy that they were pronounced unchaste. Marriage was not expected or intended to preserve the public purity, or to secure domestic happiness, but rather designed to perpetuate their heroic races, to preserve their rich patrimonial estate, and to maintain the ascendancy of their aristocratic families. For these purposes, they guarded the chastity of their wives with vigilant jealousy, and punished their adultery with severity, but the men placed themselves under no such restrictions, either in law or in fact, but they habitually sought their own pleasure away from home, in the public haunts of impurity, at the house of a Pasi, of a Leona, or of a Messalina, or at some other establishment of their numerous Cyprian and Corinthian dames, or if they could not pay the extravagant prices demanded by these celebrated beauties, they could at least resort to the public temples, and gratify their lust among the prostitutes kept there. Let's see what monogamy is. Pagan. It comes from pagan Greco-Roman tradition, and the church upheld it. Monogamy was present in the church from its very beginning, the first century AD, primarily because the church was born into a Greco-Roman world where legal monogamy was already the established law of the land. The Greeks and the Romans were pagans, and they were monogamous. They were Gentiles, pagans. Paul went to them, and they were monogamous. You think they had marriage down when they didn't even know what God was? When they were, they had 1,000 different gods, but they didn't know the one true God. Yet the church took their monogamy. However, early Christianity took their existing legal framework and radically transformed it into strict moral and spiritual requirements. They took marriage from pagans and made it doctrine, when they should have took marriage from the Bible, men from the Bible, and took that as doctrine. No, they took it from man, the world, something so important. They took that from the world instead of from God. Centuries before Christianity existed, both Greeks and Roman civil laws strictly prohibited polygamy. By the time the early church began spreading through the Roman Empire, a man could legally have one wife at a time. However, this was sociologists call legal monogamy, combined with the male resource polygyny. While a Roman or Greek man could only have one legal wife to produce legitimate heirs, it was socially acceptable and expected for him to have sexual access to enslaved people, concubines, and prostitutes. Wives, by contrast, were expected to remain absolutely loyal and exclusively monogamous. See, that is not Torah. That is degeneracy. Yet the church took it as doctrine. They only had monogamy because they only wanted one heir. But it was fine for that man to have one wife, but go be at the whorehouse, go be at these temples with prostitutes. Totally fine if he did that. Totally fine. And it was common. But you can only have one wife. Whereas what does the Bible say? All the righteous men, they all had multiple wives and concubines. And they all had legal rights. Alright? This does not. This Roman Greco marriage monogamy prevented other women from having rights. Their God-given rights. And any legal repercussion or authority or they were any other woman outside the wife treated as trash, treated as just a vessel for lust. Whereas righteous polygyny, biblical, does not. Yet the church upholds these pagan doctrines. They don't even know it's pagan. They don't even know where it comes from. But they hold it with so much vigor and such high esteem. Really? This isn't esteem right here. And this is where it came from. This is where they got it. This is where they adopted it from. To resolve this tension, early Christian theologians argued that polygamy in the Old Testament was a temporary dispensation allowed by God in the early days of humanity to populate the earth. Really? When we just read Josephus' last video that it was still custom and common for Jews to be a polygamist during Jesus' time, and Jesus said nothing about it. What did he say about, against divorce, fornication, adultery? You are barred from heaven. You are not barred from heaven from having 20 wives. You are, though, if you're fornicating, whoredom, 3 or 4 divorces, adultery, all these pastors are committing. They are barred from heaven, and they don't even know it. And they don't even know their history of monogamy. They're holding up pagan tradition, law, higher than God's law, higher than God's doctrine. They took man's way and made it law into the church and not God's way. They accepted paganism and they wonder why the church is amok. They are being punished for it. Greco-Roman monogamy is pagan doctrine. And that's what monogamy is. That's taught in the church. It comes from Greco-Roman paganism. Pagans. You're literally got your doctrine from pagans. Go read your Bible. Do what the men in the Bible did.